And without further ado, Evan, if you want to share your screen, the board is yours.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, Matt. Can everybody hear me okay? Okay, awesome. Well, yeah, thanks. I'm happy to be here. Thanks, Matt, for organizing all of this. I'm sad that, we had a nice program figured out last May, I guess it was, but then there was a pandemic, which we're still in. So it's nice to be here. Um, yeah, like Matt said, I'm just going to talk a little bit about what we're doing with public history at SUNY Cortland. And I only want to talk, you know, lecture stuff, not really lecture, but talk for 15 or 20 minutes. And then with the remainder of my time, I'd love to just stop and, if there's any questions you all have or anything you want to talk about, I'm happy to just kind of make it a little bit more casual from then on out with the remainder of my time. So let me go ahead and share my screen. I just have a few images that might be helpful to look at while we are doing this. Okay, hopefully you can all see this. This is yeah. This is just the homepage of the history department's website at SUNY Cortland. That's not me. That's one of my colleagues, Girish Bhatt, who's a professor of Russian history. And the first thing I'll say about what we do or what we're trying to do at SUNY Cortland is that really technically we're not a public history program. We don't have a program. We don't have a track in public history like a lot of other universities have, which are great. But what's really unique about SUNY Cortland is that we have made an introduction to public history a required course for every single one of our history majors. So it's not a public history program, it's just public history is just part of the regular history curriculum for every single one of our undergrads. And it's a brilliant move, but I can't take any credit for it because it was my colleagues who, they're the ones who made that change. And then they hired me the next year, which I'm very grateful for. But essentially they wanted to require a public history course for all majors because, there are a lot of history majors who do a dual major in both education and history in hopes of becoming a social studies or a history teacher. But what we found was that a year or two or three in, a lot of these students, while they still liked history, they still liked the history major, they didn't want to be teachers anymore, which is fine. But there was some concern that, a lot of students were like, oh no, I'm a senior, I've got this history degree, but like, I don't know what I'm going to do now. What are my career options? How am I gonna sell this history degree to whatever I might want to pursue in the future? So that's where public history comes from, or comes into the picture. Not that public history is like some kind of savior for history majors on the job market, but public history does a pretty good job of just letting students and anyone know just how history works in the world and the kinds of different skills that you gain as a history major. So I just changed my screen or changed the PowerPoint to show this is the very top of my syllabus. This is my Introduction to Public History course that I teach every semester at SUNY Cortland. And I wanted to put this up so you could kind of see how I introduce public history to students, because most of the students in this class, they are usually sophomore or junior level. And so they've probably taken one or two or three history courses, but they've not taken, or maybe they're taking in the same semester, beginning to take some upper level history courses. So they're just learning what history is, essentially, and so I want to kind of be clear with them about what it is. So if you look at the bottom paragraph there, that's where I just kind of went off the rails a little bit and try to just really succinctly tell my students what public history is, because a lot of them, I start class by, just having a conversation, and a lot of them don't really know, what class they signed up for. They just know they're there because it's required. Uh, so I try to, explain it to them, so I won't read it word for word, but I try to essentially say, well, public history, a definition is kind of tough, but I've come up with these 5 pillars that public history, has, that it's outside classrooms, that it's collaborative, that it includes interpreting primary and secondary sources, that it's relevant to current events in our everyday lives, and it's all about memory, about how it's almost like learning about the history of how we've remembered the past. Um, and so I start with this for all students in my class. And again, this is every single history major at SUNY Cortland. And so I think this gives them a pretty clear sense of public history. So they get the big idea first. And then we go into kind of the ins and outs. So basically every week I focus on a different aspect of public history. One week we talk about museums. Another week we talk about historic sites. Another week we talk about historic preservation. Another week we talk about documentary films and Hollywood films too, I should say. Another week we talk about oral history, and another week we talk about walking tours. And and we do interesting things too that they really enjoy. Public history that's a little more non-traditional, but that engages the public, like ghost tours at historic house museums, for example, or cemetery tours. Like Halloween themed, history-based cemetery tours, digital history, graphic novels or graphic history, like comic books used to share history. Like, for example, John Lewis just had, or a couple years ago, released his graphic memoirs of his life story. So things like that. And we go week by week and just kind of concentrate. Because again, it's an introduction to public history. So I don't want to throw them into the fire too soon, but instead we kind of survey the landscape. These are all the ways that history's at work in the world. This is how people not in classrooms, who might still be interested in history, but don't want to read tons of books about it. These are ways that history is in our everyday lives. Monuments are another good example of that. Confederate monuments, Union monuments, other things. We talk about difficult public history too, like tough topics like, how do we remember the Holocaust? How do we remember the Civil War? So in a lot of ways, public history in the classroom, like, it takes on current events, political topics that are important today. So it's a good example of how public history helps us think about the present, helps us make sense about current events, politics, what's going on in the world today. What we do later on in the semester, excuse me, is we do a project. Sometimes it's small, sometimes it's a little bit bigger. Sometimes we partner with a local organization. And what I just put up on the screen is there's this really terrific website that's free to use. I encourage you all to check it out. It's called Clio. I think its website is theclio.com. And there's also an app for iPhones and Android and all that stuff. I don't know how to say it all, but anyway, it uses Google Maps to find history sites near wherever you're at. And so one semester, pre-COVID, we partnered with the Cortland County Historical Society, my class of about 30 students. And what we did was we split into small groups. They did research at the Historical Society, and they chose each group had 5 historic markers from somewhere around Cortland County. The blue roadside markers that are all over the place. And they chose 5, and they did some research on each one of those. and they created an entry here on Clio for each of their historic signs. So that way, if people bring up Clio as an app or as a website looking for things to do, they'll find some of the projects that my students did in in connection with the Historical Society, just to kind of bring, because some of these historic markers, they might be falling down or they might be overgrown. Not all of them, but some of them were kind of hidden. And so my students were able to kind of uncover them a little bit and make them more accessible using a digital platform. Another semester, my class partnered with the 1890 House Museum, which is a historic house museum in Cortland. And what we did was my students, again, split up into groups, and they conducted oral history interviews. What we wanted to do was we wanted to help the 1890 house. They wanted to create a new exhibit about factory workers in Cortland. Because the 1890 House Museum celebrates the Wickwire family, which owned the Wickwire factories that made wire products for decades in the early 20th century till the 1970s. But a lot of the focus of the museum is not about the workers, the factory workers. And so my students conducted some interviews with people from around Cortland who remembered what factory life was like. And so the hope is for the 1890 House Museum to take these oral histories and make them part of a future exhibit that focuses on factory workers. So both of these projects, Clio with the Historical Society of Cortland County and the 1890 House Museum, they're good projects for students. They're not too big or overwhelming. They're small scale. But collectively they add up to something. And it gives my students, in this introduction to public history, not just, they're not just learning about it in a classroom, but once they get some of that classroom learning down, then they do a small project, usually with a local history organization. So I think it's really valuable in a lot of ways for them. And, a lot of times they don't like group projects, but I think towards the end of it, they almost all have positive things to say about it. And the thing that I really stress for them is career stuff, skills. So what I just shared is you can find this on the front page of our website for the history department at SUNY Cortland, but I put it here as well. And what I talk with them in the last week of the semester is, okay, we've learned all about public history. We've done this small project. Now, so what? A lot of you are going to be teachers. A lot of you don't know what you want to do with your career. Some of you might want to start your own business or, go to med school or get into construction or become a police officer or, who knows? History majors they go after all kinds of careers, which is great. But a lot of students, as undergrads are not very practiced in how to translate some of the stuff they've done for a class, like a public history class, into like a resume or a cover letter, or how to sell, their experience as learning about public history as a way to, in an interview to say, this is why I'm the best person for this job. So I try to make that a little bit more realistic for them by talking about the kinds of skills. So I have them kind of write down, what are your big picture goals? And then we talk about, okay, well, how does public history maybe help you reach those? How does learning about it this semester help you reach them? And so here on this document, I've outlined, just some of the skills they learn, why it's important to study history. And then on the right side, you can see, this is by far not a comprehensive list, but I try to just give them a little bit of a boost as far as like, where do you go? Where do you search online to find jobs where you can kind of bank on your history degree? And so this is useful. Again, the whole reason for this public history course, for it to be as a required class, is to help students be a little bit more confident in earning their history degree. earning their history major, knowing that they're not locked into just one career as a teacher, that they have a variety of things. Um, and in some cases, they pursue public history. They really get in, they want to become a museum curator. They want to work in an archive. Or they want to try to get an internship and maybe a job with the National Park Service. So it's a good foot in the door in a way. Um, so that's my introduction to public history class. And I also wanted to mention um, before going to questions and comments and talking more about anything y'all are interested in. Every semester, I also lead an internship in public history. So this is not a required course, but I would say about a quarter of our history majors do a public history internship. And um, it's also important, because they get a little bit of a taste of public history, all of them in this class, but some of them want to take the next step. And so, I work with them to find them an internship where they can earn course credit towards their history degree and also can get real world practical experience. So, and a lot of these internships are no joke. So the way we do it is that every credit hour they sign up for equals 40 hours of actual work. So a lot of them want to do a 3 credit hour internship, which is then 120 hours of work and spread over a whole semester or a summer. That's a lot. And so they get very invested as an employee, essentially, not always just as an intern. And so we've had a lot of success getting students to work, to intern at places all around central New York and beyond. Places like the Cortland County Historical Society, the 1890 House Museum, the Central New York Living History Center, um, the National Abolition Hall of Fame and Museum, um, other local historical societies like the Shenango County Historical Society, um, uh, for the county historian of Cortland County, NYPIRG, Experience Cortland, like a tourism bureau. And others have gone kind of really off the map, especially with summer internships where they are free to travel or live at home. I've had a few students work for the National Park Service. I've had a few students work in museums in New York City. And whether it's kind of a big, prestigious internship like with the National Park Service, or if it's just a local historical society in their own town, um, I think that the experiences have been overwhelmingly positive. Students who work for their own local historical societies, I just want to point out, they almost always have a great experience because they get to work in their community, they get to see a part of their hometown that they haven't seen before, they get invested, and from these internships, again, I'm trying to give them a boost up when they hit the job market after they graduate. So I have them create a resume, they write a sample cover letter for a real job, and then their supervisors for their internship, as long as the internship goes well, which it almost always does, they commit to writing for them a letter of recommendation. So they end the internship ready to go, hopefully, uh, whether maybe applying for grad school or going ahead and applying for some entry-level public history jobs, or other jobs where they can use their history skills. So for the future, just here as I wrap up, I'm going to continue teaching this Introduction to Public History course every single semester. I'm going to continue to lead this this internship option for students every single semester. And what I want to do is just to keep building up SUNY Cortland's commitment to public history. So I'm always looking for new opportunities as far as, other organizations that I can partner with for my introduction class. Is there a small project my students can work on that can benefit you in some way? Um, um, I feel like, there's so much history here in Central New York, so many organizations that could use help. And my students, they're, they can get the experience and they can actually do public history work. So I'm always looking for new ideas and new partners to help out with. Um, and um, and I'm always looking for new places for where interns can complete an internship as well. So if you or if others know of opportunities, I'm all ears. I can't always guarantee that we would be able to get a student for you because some semesters are more plentiful than others as far as students needing an internship, but we can try to make it work. But just to wrap up, I just want to say thank you and that, my goal for SUNY Cortland Public History is to not just add another class to their transcript, but to actually give them real world experience right here in our neighborhood. And hopefully they'll see results in their own personal lives, their own kind of professional development, but also hopefully all of us and organizations around here will be richer for having student involvement as well. So I'll go ahead and stop sharing and say thank you, and I'm happy to answer questions and talk further.
Okay, so let's start with, if you got questions, type them into the chat box. So we don't all at once flood the mics. And I have a quick question for you because I actually have a high school intern currently. Because historians, let's just say, tend to be a little bit older and maybe a little less technology proficient. Have you ever worked trying to partner young people, helping with things like social media or maybe making little videos where organizations struggle to get themselves out in those aspects, which is a big part of today?
Yeah, absolutely. I have actually. I've had students work at Experience Cortland, which is our county's tourism bureau, and they have helped with their social media on Instagram, Twitter, things like that. So I feel like that's a great avenue for students to help with. And also with the Cortland County Historical Society, they've helped with them as well. With one of their biggest outreach platforms is Facebook. And so students have worked with the staff at the Historical Society to do research, to kind of prepare information, photographs, historical information, sources that can then be used on Facebook or in their monthly newsletter as well. So I think that's a great avenue for students to help out with.
So we have a question from Jim and Connie Coulthard. They want to know if there's a place where they can learn more about the internship program, possibly on your website.
Actually, Matt, this is Jim. Welcome, Evan. I work part-time at the Clinton Historical Society in Clinton, New York. We have an internship program available for college students and postgraduate students. The only requirement is that they be residents of Oneida County, and the pay is $12.50 an hour. So I will put in the email contact. We're looking to start at June 1. We have one intern, looking for a couple, 3 more.
That's awesome. Thanks, John. I appreciate you sharing.
Okay.
And yeah, I saw someone else maybe in the chat. What I can do is I can maybe send Matt an email with like information about the internship program. And if there's a way, sorry, Matt, to put you on the spot, but if there's a way to send it out to the network of people here who might be interested, and then over email, you can contact me and we can be in touch from there on out.
Okay, that'd be great. Hi, Joni, how are you? Joni Lincoln, who is very much into drama and plays, has asked, have you ever thought about having an intern work to create a historical drama like Hamilton, 1776, Clinton's Ditch? So have you ever tried to link that kind of fun together?
I have not, but I would love to, because yes, theater, plays, musicals, that we talk about that in my intro to public history class. That's a great, we try to stress that you don't have to be an academic historian to be a historian, to be a public historian. Every man, every woman, a public historian in their own right. So yeah, people like the creators of Hamilton in 1776. I think that's a great outlet. One thing I have considered, but I haven't done yet, is to do like stage readings of primary sources, like like Stephen, maybe a Frederick Douglass's Fourth of July
4th of July.
speech. Yeah, right. So things like that, like parts of it, to kind of make these kind of boring, dry sources kind of come alive in a way on stage. I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, and I know there's a number of uh, reenactors that do specific events. I will never forget. I don't know if Dot Wilsey would remember this, but I gave one of the first presentations I ever gave, and the person was Robert E. Lee, and he never ever broke character while watching me present. And it was one of the weirdest, most awkward things I have ever done in my life. But to his credit, he never broke character. He was Robert E. Lee, and after it was done, he walked up and questioned me on a bunch of stuff. And yeah, it was an interesting experience.
Wow.
So, but I think I know there's Frederick Douglass reenactors. I know that there's Abraham Lincoln reenactors that do that kind of stuff, that do that primary source type reading of specific speeches. Yeah. Folks, if you got other questions, type them in quick, because we're going to take a break in a couple of minutes. And when we do that, Evans, I'm sure, has very important things to move on to. So we have a question. We have Joni said they have a meeting next week in Cayuga County. She's going to share your information. All right.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Any other questions for Evan?
I do.
Hey, Martin.
Hi, Evan. Good to see you again. Thank you for what you do. Thank you for your presentation. I wished I'd taken the course back when I went through SUNY Cortland.
You can still take it. You can audit it.
Was invented. No, I've reached the point where I'm not tech savvy, don't even know how to chat. So how am I going to keep up with the youngsters? It's interesting that a week ago I had a neighbor approach me and say, I've got a grandson who just loves history and would like to know what can he do with it other than teach. He doesn't want to teach. I think for various reasons, political and otherwise, teaching's gotten a bad rep recently. But he's concerned that if he doesn't go into teaching, he won't make a salary that even approaches that of a teacher. How should I handle this with my neighbor?
That's a great question. And I have some experience with this, because actually twice a semester, SUNY Cortland does like a student visit weekend, or day, I should say, where parents and potential students come. And the history department always staffs a booth at this event. And we get that question all the time from parents who are just concerned. I mean, and rightfully so, because obviously with other majors like maybe economics or pre-med, there's a very clear path to a career.
Right.
It's not that way with humanities or with social science always, with history in particular. And so what we try to do is we say, I guess there's a two-part way to answer this. The first part maybe isn't always so effective, but sometimes we still try, and we try to say, look, history it offers you a flexible career path. Now, a lot of times they don't want a flexible career path. They want something set in stone that's easier to figure out. But we try to say, look, we're not trying to train you for a particular career path. We're trying to broaden your mind, understanding, to be able to pursue almost any career you want. With a history background, of course, there are some careers where you would need to go to graduate school or get specialized training, but we try to stress that history can get you there. If you want to do law, history. If you're thinking about med school, you don't have to be pre-med. You can go history. But even more specific to that, we try to not nail down like we try not to say specific careers are good for a history. Like a history major isn't good for certain careers, but rather we try to say it's wide open. And we try to talk about this public history class as well, and the internship class that we offer as well, to say, if you become a history major, we're not going to just leave you high and dry after you graduate. You're going to take this intro to public history class, which is specific to helping you think about why history can be applicable in a number of different career paths. It's going to get you thinking. We're not going to tell you should do this path or this path, but we're going to help you see how history widens up possibilities. And then, based on potential, we will help you get an internship. we won't say, oh, find an internship on your own and then come to us. Like, no, they hired me to help students get those. So, in some ways, this answer is not good enough for a lot of folks who might want that clear-cut path. And I understand that. But we try to stress that, history is by far, not a useless career path as well. We also share, and then I'll wrap it up. But it's such a good question, Martin. We also share information, website information from the American Historical Association, the AHA, which is the big history academic body. And over the last decade, they've done a lot of research into that very question. And they have a lot of booklets, PDFs even you can get online, and studies that they've done to show all the different career paths history majors can take. And also they've done a lot of research into like financial data, like earnings. History majors earn about the same as like a business major long-term, things like that. And so we try to show that to parents and to prospective students to say, look, this is what you're going to get with a history major. You're not boxing yourself in. You're not handicapping your future in any kind of way. And we think overall that's effective once they kind of see from that angle that, oh, it opens up a lot of possibilities. So I'll stop there. Thanks, Martin.
Thank you, Evan.
Thank you, Evan. Susan Hughes pointed out that law programs love the history people, because we need more lawyers. Also, I want to thank Evan again. Just for my perspective, Martin, when I started as a historian, I was part-time till 2017. Somewhere's Denise isn't here, thank you. But since I've started, there's now, I think, about a dozen full-time county historians, and all of us are slightly different. Some are the heads of records departments. A lot deal kind of like I do with a tourism aspect and with research and writing. So everyone's a little different, but it is, ancestry is $1 billion industry. So the history business is very much booming. Lots of places need researchers now. History inherently teaches you how to research. So that's a great thing. Again, Evan, thank you for taking the time to talk to us today. I really do appreciate it. If Evan's going to send me some stuff along, so I'm going to ask everybody that's in here right now, put your name and the town, municipality, organization that you represent, so that I can make sure that I have everybody correct. And when Evan sends that stuff along, I will forward it all to you. Let's take a 3-minute break, and I'll get Ryan set up to go, and we'll see you all in a few. Thanks again, Evan.
Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. Thanks, Matt.
Yeah.